Brandon Blewett. I am so excited to chat with you. Thank you for sitting down with me today.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yes. Okay. Before we dive into everything, tell us a little bit about who you are and some of your background.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to do that. So, Brandon Blewett, I wrote the book "How to Avoid Strangers on Airplanes," and I know the title sounds a bit curmudgeon-y, but it actually is a play on words, and it comes from spending 15 years as a weekly business traveler. Airports have largely been my second office, if not my primary residence. So, in my day job, I spend a lot of times evaluating people, situations. I'm in M&A, so we're constantly looking for businesses to partner with and acquire. And it turns out that airports may be a better case study in how to evaluate behavior than actually
Oh.
doing that in the professional world.
You've done a lot of traveling, so you can speak to this. And you know what? We see a lot of
Yes.
airport behavior on social media and, people getting kicked off planes and things happening. Why do you think travel situations bring out some of the worst or the most revealing versions of ourselves?
In my opinion, travel strips away your buffer. And, oftentimes people are tired, you're off schedule, you're slightly uncomfortable because if it's summertime, they're blasting the
Mhm.
AC, so you're cold. If it's winter, you've got your coat because you're trying to get as much on you so you don't have to check a bag. And then, the heat's, full blast. And I think when all of those elements create chaos, sometimes the worst versions of ourselves just tend to show up.
Yeah, that's so true. And you might be hangry. That's going to add to it.
Yes.
You didn't get food
Yes.
in time. You're running late. So you didn't
Always,
get
always keep snacks on you. That's a key thing for me since I was 3 till age
Yes.
40.
Keep those snacks. Oh, that's key. I have a daughter, so we definitely keep snacks with us just in case. You never know when the sandwich shop is going to close and
Exactly.
you're running there.
And you don't
Okay,
want to spend
and
$18 on M&Ms, right?
right. You just don't want to. Okay, so Brandon, you frame certain annoying traveler behaviors as issues of self-regulation. What does that actually mean in everyday terms?
To me, it's the ability to not act on your full first impulse, right? Like there are times when I get to the airport and I have a call I need to take, and what I want to do is speak and speak loudly, so I'm not having to repeat myself. But the other people in the either in the gate area or on the plane don't necessarily want to hear that conversation. Similarly, when the seatbelt sign goes off when your plane gets into the gate, I totally understand the need to or the desire rather to stand up, stretch your legs, but that doesn't mean
Mhm.
that if you're in row 18, you can go ahead and plant your bag in the aisle and try to beat everybody else off the plane because there's
Yeah.
inevitably going to be someone in row 12 or 13, their bags in row 20, and you're delaying that whole process.
Yeah. Oh, that's so true. Okay, and you mentioned after years, 15 years of weekly business travel, what patterns started to stand out to you, like, most clearly about human behavior in airports and airplanes both?
I was able to whittle in the book. I have the 6 habits of highly annoying travelers, and I was actually able to whittle it down to 6 because the same characters show up every flight, right? There's gate lice, the people that just storm the boarding area, even if they're in group 9. The eager exiter, which I mentioned, where it's the person that's got their bag in the aisle just as the seatbelt sign is going off.
The
The
eager
back,
exiter, I like that.
the backpack wrecking crew, the person that all their spatial awareness is just completely gone by the time they get through the TSA scanner, and they're walking through the plane swinging around with a backpack to say hello to the person next to them. And then I'm an aisle seat guy, so I get a black eye, and have fun explaining that to HR when you get to work,
Yeah.
after your flight.
Why do you think stress and fatigue so quickly overrides our basic social awareness in travel settings?
you know to me, fatigue shrinks patience and perspective. And I think one perspective that people need to have when we're traveling is we're all in this together, and fatigue very easily takes us from that mental state to main character energy, where
Mhm.
it's just everybody's in my way, right? And so to me, if you can avoid that fatigue and feeling overly tired because of things that are in your control, that goes a long way.
Yeah. So true. Okay, and you connect fitness to patience and emotional control. What's the relationship between physical discipline and behavioral discipline on the road?
I think it's twofold. One, just the biological effect of fitness. If I go work out in the morning before a flight, I feel on top of the world. I've gone through my routine. Your endorphins are released. You're just in a good mood, and things are going to be a bit funnier when you see these odd behaviors transpiring in front of you at the airport or on the plane. But to me,
Yeah.
the other piece is psychological, and that fitness is one of the few things that trains discomfort on purpose.
Mm.
So if you can handle that, in the gym or on walks or on runs, you're more likely to be able to handle a delayed boarding group or a delayed flight. And I think a lot of that's because there's that delayed gratification that's built into fitness, that it's not, I'm just going to get there, with one workout or with one healthy meal. And I think that, so it's that biological piece, but also, the psychological piece as well.
That's so true. I mean, I think like when, when you're working out, you're charging your battery
Right.
and it just lasts a little bit longer and you have the patience to deal with things that are out of your control. It's a really good point because those things are completely out of your
I,
control, a lot of it.
I call it a fuel source. It's and one of the stories in the book was a couple that had just gone out on the town in Key West, had drained their battery completely. And it was very apparent by the way they just reacted to a series of delays. And, I'd hydrated and, gone to the gym and, got sleep the night before. And I found them very entertaining. And to me, it's just a very different mental state in the way we interacted with the gate agent. I got a lot more help getting to my destination despite the storms, as opposed to them, because of how they acted.
Sure, sure. Yeah, there's that part too. How does neglecting movement or routine show up in later in a person's tone, choices, or interactions while traveling? How does it show up later?
To me, it compounds. So if I skip my routine in the morning, I get a little agitated. Hangry is such a great word. My mom used that on us when we were kids, and it's still true to this day. My team can tell if I have not had coffee, gone to the gym, and eaten. And so to me, when you skip your routine in the morning by 3 p.m., it's a little bit easier to snap, and it shows up in shorter tone, worse decisions, and ultimately zero patience, which is a recipe for disaster when you're in a very confined space surrounded by people that 95% of them are complete strangers.
Yeah, very, very good point. I think that's like normal in like your everyday life. What those things are going to add up to you
Right.
not feeling well and reacting, but then you add all in these pressures in an airport and sitting on a plane. That's just even more you're adding to your plate. Okay, what does it look like when someone has emotional margin, and how can you tell when someone's running without it?
To me, emotional margin is this buffer between stimulus and reaction. I'm not going to say that, just because I wrote this book or I travel all the time, that there aren't times when, I would love to partake in the activity that is viral, right, on the internet. But I think when you have that margin, you can absorb the negative impacts, whether that's delays or, someone, knocking your bag in your face. Instead of, getting up and making a scene, it's just kind of making a face at the flight attendant. He or she will probably laugh, and then, hey, maybe you get a drink out of it, right? Once you're up in the air. And to me, it's something that you can spot it because it really reveals itself when someone faces some type of inconvenience. To me,
Mhm.
that's when you start to see it. And if you're on a flight where there's a delay and you hear the gate agent talk about, hey, we know that a lot of you have connections, that's where I'd start to be like, okay, who do I look around, make sure that, I'm not around this person, they might detonate. and,
Yeah.
and I don't want to be in the background of any videos that do go viral, even though I watch them all.
It's hard to look away from those. I have a question for you too. Are you an early person since you've traveled so much? Do you like to show up early or you kind of like, I'm going to spend as much time as I can at home and get right to through security into the gate?
It's a bit of a hybrid. There have been way too many flights where I had a meeting run late. You're trying to return the rental car, and you're at Chicago O'Hare sprinting to the airport like you're in the B cast of Home Alone, and
Yes.
then it's 20 degrees outside, but now I'm sweating on the plane because I was running a suit. Right? I don't like to get in those situations, but I also don't like to spend an unnecessary amount of time at the airport, just given how much I fly. So what I try to do, and I think this is just a good way to look at it, I will generally gauge traffic patterns to the airport. I'll look at, hey, so many of the apps now, it's like if you're going to be driving or commuting at this time, this is how long it's going to take. So, sketch that out. Then most airports now have TSA wait times. You can look at, say, the day before the time you're going to fly, see how long the wait times are. It'll generally be about the same. Okay, that's
Oh,
another
that's good
thing.
to know.
That's another thing that you can factor in, right? And then if you're parking, reserve your parking ahead of time. Understand the shuttle commute, to get from the garage if it's offsite, to the terminal. do the math. That'll give you a rough, aggregate of the amount of time it's going to take you to get from your door, through security. And then depending on your comfort level, maneuvering airports, add 15, 30 minutes, an hour. I'm probably going to do it just to that basic aggregator because, again, I don't like to spend a whole lot of time at the actual airport. But I think there's ways that we can eliminate some of that feeling that we're out of control if we just prepare a little bit more.
Oh, that's really great advice. A lot you can do beforehand and looking at TSA
Right.
wait lines and stuff. That's really good to know. Thank you for that advice. Okay. And Brandon, airports are often, like we mentioned, high pressure environments. What specific moments tend to trigger people into inconsiderate behavior? Like, what have you seen the most triggering for people?
It's like all of them. No, I think there's three or four that probably stand out the most. I think going through security is one, especially when someone's bag gets pulled. I totally get it. It's your personal item. Someone's rummaging through them in front of lots of people. I think that gets people riled up. But I'd say
Yeah.
that the where I see the most negative interactions between passengers have to do with boarding. And I think that's tied to overhead bin space because I think a lot of people are really antsy to get on the plane because they want to make sure that their bag also makes it and then it's not checked, right? And so
Mm,
that process, you've got all these people funneling through one door. To me, creates a lot of bad behavior. And then, as I alluded to earlier with the eager exiter, as you're trying to get off the plane, to me, again, it's not dissimilar from when you're exiting a concert, right? Or you're pulling out of a high traffic area after a major event. You can't just block the exit, and moving faster and getting in queue sooner is probably not going to work because there's sort of a natural flow to all of it.
yeah, that's a good point. That's a really good point. It's like leaving a concert. There's traffic. Can't go anywhere. It's gonna be
Right,
it's gonna
right.
be a minute. Of the common
You
travel
pull your
habits
car out, but you won't go anywhere.
yeah, yes. Of the common travel habits you've observed, which ones are most misunderstood, would you say, or unfairly normalized?
I'd say the most unfairly normalized is talking on your phone like on speaker in in public. I just think conversations between two people are meant to be had between two people. I
Yeah.
have seen a lot of airlines go to they call it quiet cabin policies, that if you have your headphones on, you can be on the phone, so long as the plane's at the gate. But this notion that we all need to be able to hear everybody else's conversations, I think is it's very odd to me that that's become so normal
Yeah.
so quickly.
Yeah, can we all be on the same page with that? That'd be great.
Yeah.
It's
And you're
I
taking
just
off
think
your
it's
shoes too.
respectful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. How much of being a considerate traveler, speaking of that, is actually about preparation before the trip rather than behavior during it?
I think preparation has got to be, I'm going to use math here, even though this is not scientific, 80% of it. Because to me, if you're not stressed about the time it's going to take you to get to the airport, the time it's going to take you to get through security, to get to your gate, you've alleviated 80% of the pressure. You're not going to miss your flight, right? So some of the other chaotic things that happen where there's a cart that just stops, in the middle of the concourse as you're walking, someone's running through trying to catch their flight and is in your way, those things are probably not going to be as disruptive to you as a person when you're not concerned about making it on the plane.
Okay, that's a good point. And you mentioned that discipline in one area of life leaks into others. Can you explain how that shows up in like real world behavior?
To me, it's not just the airport. It's if someone's going to cut corners and small things, they're going to do it everywhere, right? And you don't just become disciplined when you're put in high pressure situations. Like, you have to build that discipline on a regular basis. So to me, travel isn't something that tests it. It just really exposes the pattern that we've created for ourselves in our daily
Mhm.
lives.
Mm, so true, so true. What are there? Okay, you've traveled a lot. What are some signs, some subtle signs that someone is starting to maybe lose their patience a little bit or some self-control that may be obvious to may or not obvious to others, but like you've traveled so much so you notice it?
I think the first thing that I see people start to do is, instead of asking questions, they start with directives and commands, especially towards, say, a gate agent or someone at a customer service agent desk. Instead
Mm,
of being like, "Hey, can you help me?" It's, "You've done this. The airline's done this." That's generally the first cue that, okay, they're not looking for a solution, right? They're about to blow their gasket.
mhm.
Um, the other thing that I'll see is very very short answers, or we're all in confined spaces. We're sharing armrests. Someone just kind of gripping, very, very tightly. That's generally a sign. And then when there's certain small things that in any other situation you would just, oh, like, no problem. When people start to overreact to those things, like, oh, you brushed my leg, even though we're in a seat that's made for someone the size of a toddler. You brushed my leg. Like, how dare you? You're like, okay, this person is probably bordering on being upset, and it's in my opinion just generally best to try to diffuse the situation and stay to yourself so that,
Yeah.
again, you don't wind up on YouTube for the wrong
Yes.
reason.
Yes. That's the goal. Absolutely. Okay, Brandon, maybe one shift. Can you give us one shift that would immediately improve the experience of air travel for everyone if more people adopted it?
I think that if people were just aware of the space that we were taking up, both physically and mentally, in the airport, that alone would solve 70% of this, right? Think about the behaviors that you would not want to see others to see in yourself, and don't commit them. I think if all of us took that approach, air travel would be much better overnight.
Ah, that's so true. I love that. And then obviously, what we can control is ourselves, make sure we're getting our sleep, we're eating our
Yes.
breakfast before a flight, taking
Yes.
snacks, doing all the things to help us be able to deal with things a little bit better. Is there anything else you want to mention that we didn't cover?
I think the only thing that other piece that I would mention is, be kind to the crew. They're not creating the storms, they're not creating the maintenance delays. And there have been so many times where I approached, whether it was a gate agent, a flight attendant, a pilot, and I made a joke like, "Hey, you must be having a really good day, right? If there's a massive amount of delays that are going on." And if you're creative and approach the situation with humor, they have a lot of control behind the desk, right? And so
Yeah.
if you're willing to show, I'm willing to like do some work here, and you're friendly and you're appreciative, that's going to go a long way. I've never seen anybody make a situation better by being disrespectful to a crew member.
It's so true. My mom was a gate agent for years. In fact, she retired in the airline industry, and that's the
Oh,
biggest
wow.
thing is just be nice,
Yeah.
and it's actually really easy to be nice to everyone. So I love that advice. Just be nice and be kind. Everyone's just doing our best. Brandon, where can we follow you for more?
My website is brandonblewett.com, and I'm also on Instagram, Brandon in the Air. That's the same, is it moniker handle, on X. And then I have a YouTube channel. It's Brandon _N_the _air. Lots of underscores on that one. Someone had already taken the original.
But you got that one. That's enough. I love it. Okay, Brandon, thank you so much for this info and this insight. And we appreciate you joining us today. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Of course. And thank you for listening to another episode of Fresh Off the Set. Please rate, review, and subscribe, and we will see you next week.